I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the email notification flash across my daughter's laptop screen. I wasn't snooping, let me be clear about that. Sarah had asked me to help her clean up her inbox, delete spam, organize folders, the usual digital housekeeping she never had time for. She'd left the laptop open on the kitchen table, told me her password was Family First 2024, and rushed off to pick up the kids from soccer practice. Just delete anything that looks like junk, Mom, she'd said, kissing my cheek. You're a lifesaver. But there, right at the top of her inbox, was an email from someone named Marcus Chun with a subject line that made my blood run cold. Re-property transfer timeline, your mother's house. My hand started shaking before I even clicked it open. When I did, the words seemed to blur and sharpen all at once, like my eyes couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. As discussed, once the deed transfer is complete, we can list the property within 48 hours. Given the current market, I estimate we can close within 30 days. Your profit after fees should be around $40,000. Let me know when you'd like to schedule the staging walkthrough. I had to read it 3 times before the full meaning sank in. My daughter, my Sarah, who I'd raised alone after her father died, who I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college, who told me just last month that she wanted me to transfer the house into her name for estate planning purposes, was planning to sell my home out from under me. The home where I'd lived for 37 years. The home where she'd grown up. The home I'd signed over to her just 2 weeks ago because she'd convinced me it would protect our family's assets and make things easier when the time comes. I remember her exact words. Mom, this way you'll never have to worry. The house will stay in the family, and you can live here for as long as you want. It's just paperwork. Just paperwork. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart with an icy fist. I sat there at my own kitchen table, or what used to be my kitchen table, staring at that laptop screen trying to make sense of how I'd ended up here. How had I not seen this coming? The signs had been there for months, I realized now. Small things I dismissed or explained away because I loved my daughter and wanted to believe the best of her. It started about 6 months ago when Sarah began visiting more frequently. First, I was thrilled. After she married Derek 3 years ago, their visits had become less frequent, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, always rushed, always with the kids demanding attention. But suddenly she was stopping by twice a week, sometimes more. She'd bring coffee, ask about my day, sit with me on the porch swing we'd installed when she was 12. I've been thinking about how much I miss our talks, she'd said one afternoon in May, squeezing my hand. Derek's always working, the kids are always busy. And I realized I've been neglecting the most important woman in my life. Those words had meant everything to me. I was 72 years old, widowed for 15 years, and my daughter was my whole world. Yes, I had friends, my book club, my church group, my neighbor Margaret who I'd known for 20 years. But Sarah was my blood, my legacy, the little girl I'd rocked to sleep every night singing, "You are my sunshine." Having her back in my life, genuinely interested in spending time with me, felt like a gift I didn't know I'd been missing. Then came the conversations about the house. "This place is getting too big for you, Mom," Sarah had said one evening in June, looking around the living room with what I'd thought was concern. "All these stairs, the yard maintenance, the old plumbing. What if something happens? What if you fall and no one's here?" I'd laughed it off. "I'm not helpless, sweetheart. I still do my yoga 3 times a week. Just last month I repainted the guest bedroom myself." "That's exactly what worries me," she'd countered, her voice taking on that particular tone that made her sound so much like my mother. "You're on a ladder at your age? Mom, one slip and you could break a hip. Then what? You'd end up in assisted living anyway, and wouldn't you rather make that choice on your terms?" The mention of assisted living had sent a shiver through me. I'd visited my friend Dorothy in one of those places after her stroke. The fluorescent lights, the smell of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables, the way the staff talked to residents like they were children. Dorothy had died within 6 months, and I'd always thought it was the loss of her independence that really killed her, not the stroke. "I'm not ready for that," I'd said firmly. "I'm staying in my home." Of course, Sarah had agreed quickly, too quickly I now realized. "That's not what I meant at all. I'm just saying we should plan ahead. Make sure everything is in order so you never have to worry." Over the following weeks, the conversations had evolved. Sarah started bringing paperwork, articles about estate planning, information about property taxes and inheritance law. She'd sit at this very table, spreading documents across the surface, pointing out complicated legal language that made my head spin. See, Mom? If the house is in your name when you pass, it goes through probate. That means lawyers' fees, months of legal process. But if you transfer it to me now, we avoid all that. Plus, there are tax benefits. Derek's accountant explained it all to me. Derek's accountant. Derek, who worked in finance and always seemed to be stressed about money despite his supposedly high-paying job. Derek, who'd convinced Sarah they needed to upgrade to a bigger house in a better school district 2 years ago. Taking on a mortgage I suspected was beyond their means. Derek, who I'd overheard on the phone once saying something about being cash poor but asset rich once this works out. I'd ignored that too. Written it off as me misunderstanding the context. But this is my home, I protested weakly. Your father and I bought this house when you were 2 years old. We painted every wall, refinished the floors, planted the garden. Everything here is a memory. Sarah's eyes had gotten misty. God, she was good at that. Mom, I know. Don't you think I know? I grew up here. I have all those memories too. That's exactly why I want to keep it in the family. This way it's protected. It'll always be our house, the house where 3 generations of our family lived. When the kids are older, maybe they'll want to live here. Isn't that beautiful? If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more tales of resilience and justice, please consider subscribing to the channel. It was beautiful. It was the exact right thing to say to make me feel like transferring the deed wasn't losing my home but preserving a legacy. Sarah knew which strings to pull because she was my daughter. She'd learned from watching me my entire life that family meant everything to me. That I'd sacrifice anything for the people I loved. So I'd agreed. Sarah had arranged everything, the lawyer appointment, the paperwork, the witnesses. The attorney had been younger than Sarah, barely 30, and he'd rushed through the explanation of what I was signing. This is a standard quitclaim deed, he'd said, sliding the papers across his desk. It transfers ownership of the property from Edith Morrison to Sarah Morrison Blackwell, with the understanding that the current occupant retains right of residence. Simple and straightforward. Mom keeps living there, right? Sarah had interjected, her hand on my shoulder. That's the most important part. Well, the deed itself doesn't specify. The lawyer had begun, but Sarah cut him off. We have a verbal agreement. Mom lives there as long as she wants. That's the whole point of this. Verbal agreement. I hadn't known then that verbal agreements about property are worth about as much as the paper they're not written on. I'd signed. The pen had felt heavy in my hand, but I'd signed because I trusted my daughter. Because she was all I had. Because the alternative was believing that my own child, the baby I'd nursed and raised and loved more than my own life, would betray me. That was 2 weeks ago. 14 days since I'd handed over the deed to my house, my security, my entire adult life. And now I was staring at an email that revealed the truth. This had never been about protecting me or preserving family legacy. This had been a con job. A long, calculated con job executed by my own daughter. I scrolled through the rest of the email chain. My vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. There were earlier messages going back months. Sarah and this realtor Marcus had been in contact since April, 2 months before she even started the conversations about estate planning with me. Once I convinced her to sign over the deed. One message from Sarah read, "How quickly can we move?" Marcus's response, "I can have a buyer lined up before the ink is dry. Properties in your mother's neighborhood are gold right now. We should clear at least $25,000 after all fees and commissions. $325,000. That's what my home was worth. That's what I was worth to my daughter." Another email, this one from early September. "She's dragging her feet on signing. Keeps saying she needs to think about it. Any suggestions?" Marcus had replied with tactics, mention nursing home costs, bring up horror stories about probate, emphasize the tax benefits. It was a playbook for manipulating elderly parents, and Sarah had followed it perfectly. The most recent email before the one I'd first seen was from 3 days ago. Sarah had written, "It's done. She signed yesterday. The deed is being recorded now. I told her we're keeping it in the family, that she can stay as long as she wants. She has no idea. How soon can we list it? I need this money, Marcus. Derek's been asking questions about our finances and I need to show some progress on our investments. Our investments. Was that what I was? An investment to liquidate? I sat there for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, reading and rereading the email thread, each message adding another layer to my understanding of how completely I'd been fooled. Sarah had planned this for months. She'd manufactured our reconciliation, engineered our heart-to-heart talks, fabricated concern for my well-being, all to get me to sign over my house so she could sell it and pocket the money. And what was supposed to happen to me? The emails didn't say explicitly, but there was one message from Marcus that hinted at the plan. Once we have a buyer and a closing date, you'll need to handle the current occupant situation. I'd suggest giving at least 30 days notice. It looks better if there are any legal challenges. Most elderly people will move in with family, or find a senior community without much fuss if you frame it right. Without much fuss. They were expecting me to just go along with it. To accept being evicted from my own home, the home I'd just given away, and move into some assisted living facility or, God forbid, impose on Sarah and Derek's household where I'd be a burden they'd resent. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted me back to reality. Sarah was home. I could hear her voice talking to the kids as they piled out of her SUV. Something about stopping for ice cream if they finished their homework. Normal, everyday mother-daughter stuff. The kind of thing I used to do with her. My hands moved without conscious thought, closing the laptop, picking up my coffee cup, crossing to the sink. By the time Sarah walked through my door I thought bitterly, except it wasn't mine anymore. I was standing at the sink rinsing the cup, my face composed into what I hoped was a normal expression. "Hey Mom." Sarah breezed in, designer purse over her shoulder, yoga pants that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "Thanks so much for tackling my inbox. Did you get through much of it?" I turned, looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was smiling, bright and genuine looking, and if I hadn't just read those emails, I would never have suspected the serpent beneath that sunny exterior. How had I raised someone capable of this? Where had I gone wrong? "I made some progress," I said carefully. My voice sounded normal, which amazed me. Inside I was screaming. There was a lot of spam. I deleted what I could. "You're the best," Sarah said, already moving toward the stairs. "I've got to change and start dinner. Derek's got a late meeting, so it's just me and the kids tonight. You want to stay? I'm making that chicken casserole you like." The chicken casserole I'd taught her how to make when she was 16. The recipe that had been in our family for 3 generations, passed down from my grandmother. Another piece of our shared history she was willing to sell off for $40,000. "No thank you," I said. "I have some things to take care of at home." Home. The word tasted bitter now. How much longer would I even have a home? Sarah paused on the stairs, turned back with that concerned expression she'd perfected over the past months. "Everything okay, Mom? You seem quiet." I could have confronted her right then. Told her I knew everything, thrown her betrayal in her face, demanded to know how she could do this to me. But something stopped me. Maybe instinct, maybe self-preservation. Maybe the same fierce independence that had gotten me through my husband's death and raising a child alone and every other hardship life had thrown at me. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I said, and the endearment felt like glass in my mouth. "Just a little tired." "Well, get some rest," Sarah said, already dismissing me, already moving on. "And thanks again for helping with the email. Love you." "Love you too," I said automatically, wondering if I meant it anymore. Wondering if she'd ever really meant it. I drove home to what used to be my home in a daze. The familiar route I'd driven thousands of times seemed different now, like I was seeing it for the last time, memorizing landmarks before an execution. The old oak tree on the corner of Maple and Fifth where Sarah had learned to ride a bike. The public library where I'd taken her every Saturday for story time. The diner where we'd celebrated her acceptance to college with banana splits. All memories. All lies apparently, or at least they meant so little to her that she could destroy them for money. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a long moment, looking at the house. It was a modest 3-bedroom ranch, built in the 1970s, with white siding I'd had replaced 10 years ago and black shutters I'd painted myself. The front garden was my pride and joy. Roses I'd cultivated for decades, hydrangeas that bloomed brilliant blue every summer. The small Japanese maple I planted when Sarah graduated high school. I knew every inch of this property. I'd scraped and saved to pay the mortgage, gone without new clothes and vacations to make the payments, and finally, gloriously, paid it off 7 years ago. Free and clear, I thought. My security. My legacy. And I just signed it away. No, I thought, stepping out of the car. I was conned into signing it away. There's a difference. Inside, the house felt different. Emptier somehow, even though nothing had changed physically. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls, the furniture, the framed photos that documented a lifetime. Here was Sarah at 5, missing her front teeth. Sarah at 13, awkward in braces. Sarah at 18, radiant in her prom dress. Sarah at 25, beautiful in her wedding gown. Me beside her in Mother of the Bride blue. Both of us crying happy tears. Had any of it been real? Or had I been a fool from the beginning? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, the same bed I'd shared with my husband, the bed where I'd comforted Sarah through nightmares and fevers, the bed I'd cried in after Tom's funeral, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to just accept this. I wasn't going to go gentle into whatever future Sarah had planned for me. I was 72, not dead. And I'd been handling difficult situations my entire life. The next morning I called in a favor. My friend Margaret's son was a real estate attorney, one of the best in the state. I'd known Jeremy since he was in diapers, had baked cookies for his study sessions through law school. Now he had his own practice and a reputation for being both brilliant and ruthless. Aunt Edith, Jeremy said when I reached him at his office. He'd always called me that even though we weren't related. This is a nice surprise. What can I do for you? I need legal advice, I said. And I need you to keep it confidential, even from your mother for now. His tone changed immediately, became professional. Of course. What's going on? I told him everything. The whole sordid story spilled out. Sarah's sudden renewed interest in me, the conversations about estate planning, the pressure to transfer the deed, the emails I'd found. Jeremy listened without interrupting, and when I finished there was a long silence. Jesus, Aunt Edith, he finally said, and I could hear the anger in his voice. I'm so sorry. This is elder financial abuse. It's actually a crime. Can we get the house back? I asked. That was the crucial question. Maybe, Jeremy said carefully. A quitclaim deed can be challenged on several grounds. Undue influence, lack of mental capacity, fraud. From what you've told me, we have a strong case for undue influence and possibly fraud. She systematically manipulated you into signing over valuable property under false pretenses. The email thread you found is smoking gun evidence. Hope flickered in my chest, fragile as a candle flame. What do I need to do? First, we need to document everything. I want you to forward me those emails. Can you access them again? I think so. Sarah uses the same password for everything. Good. Forward them to my personal email, the one I'm going to give you now. Also, write down everything you remember about the conversations leading up to the signing, dates, what was said, who was present. Every detail matters. Then we'll file a motion to void the deed transfer based on fraud and undue influence. How long will that take? Could be months, Jeremy admitted. But here's the thing, once we file, it creates a cloud on the title. She won't be able to sell the property until the legal challenge is resolved. That buys us time. I felt something shift inside me from victim to fighter. What do I owe you for this? Aunt Edith, you baked me cookies through 3 years of law school and wrote me a recommendation letter for my first job. We'll call it even. Plus, his voice hardened, I really hate people who take advantage of the elderly. It's going to be my pleasure to nail your daughter to the wall. Over the next 3 days, I became a woman on a mission. I accessed Sarah's email again. She still hadn't changed the password, and forwarded the entire thread with Marcus Chun to Jeremy. I also found other damning evidence. A message to Derek saying, "Don't worry about the house payment. I've got the mom situation handled." A text to her friend Lauren. "Just got mom to sign. 40K, here we come. New kitchen and that trip to Europe we've been planning." Each discovery was like a knife to the heart, but I documented everything. I wrote a detailed timeline of every conversation, every visit, every manipulation. I gathered the paperwork from the deed transfer, the business card from that rushed young lawyer, receipts showing Sarah had paid his fee. I also did something else. I called my other friend Patricia, who worked at the local newspaper. Patricia had been trying to get me to do a feature on the community garden I'd helped establish 15 years ago. Now I had a different story for her. "Patricia," I said when we met for coffee at the diner, "how would you feel about a story on elder financial abuse? I have a first-hand account." Her eyes widened. "Are you serious? Edith, what happened?" I told her a carefully edited version, keeping Sarah's name out of it for now. I want people to know what to look for. The warning signs. How it can happen even with family, especially with family. Too many elderly people are being taken advantage of, and they're too ashamed to speak up. "This is important," Patricia said, pulling out her notebook. "Would you be willing to go on record?" "Eventually," I said. "Let me get through the legal process first. But yes, I want this story told." Jeremy filed the legal challenge on a Thursday morning, and by Thursday afternoon, Sarah was at my door. I'd been expecting this, had prepared for it, but my heart still raced when I saw her car pull up. She didn't knock. Of course she didn't. She owned the house now, at least on paper. She came bursting through the door, her face flushed, her voice shrill. "Mom! What the hell is going on? I just got served with legal papers saying you're challenging the deed transfer? That you're accusing me of fraud." I was sitting in my reading chair, a book in my lap, though I hadn't actually been able to focus on reading for days. I looked up at her calmly, or at least with the appearance of calm. Inside I was trembling. "Yes," I said simply. "I am. Why would you do this?" Sarah demanded, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "I was trying to help you. Everything I did was for your benefit, to protect you." "Stop," I said quietly, and something in my tone made her pause. "Just stop, Sarah. I know everything. I saw the emails." The color drained from her face. "What emails?" "The emails between you and Marcus Chun. The ones where you planned this whole thing months in advance. Where you calculated how much money you'd make from selling my house. Where you strategized about how to manipulate me into signing." For a long moment Sarah just stared at me. Then she tried a different tactic, her voice shifting to something softer, almost pleading. "Mom, you don't understand. Derek and I are in trouble financially. The house, the cars, the kids' private school. It's all so expensive. We needed this. And you're going to... eventually you won't need this big house. I was just planning ahead." "Planning ahead?" I stood up, and I'd never felt taller, stronger. "You were planning to sell my home out from under me, and stick me in some assisted living facility. You conned me, Sarah. You manipulated me. You used my love for you as a weapon against me. I'm your daughter," she cried, tears starting to flow. But unlike the past months, I could see they were tears of frustration and anger, not genuine emotion. "How can you do this to me? How can you choose a house over your own child? How could you choose money over your own mother?" I countered. "How could you look me in the eye, tell me you loved me, tell me this was about preserving family legacy, all while planning to take everything I have?" Sarah's expression hardened. The mask slipped completely, and for the first time, I saw real hatred in my daughter's eyes. "You're making a mistake," she said coldly. "Derek says that deed transfer is legal. You're not going to win this." "Maybe not," I said. "But I'm going to try. And in the meantime, you can't sell the house. The title is clouded with the legal challenge. So whatever financial trouble you're in, you'll have to find another way out of it." "This is insane," Sarah spat. "You're being selfish and paranoid and..." "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. You may own it on paper, but I still live here, and I'm telling you to leave." For a moment I thought she might refuse, but something in my face must have convinced her I was serious. She turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. After she left, I sat down and cried for the first time since finding those emails. Not gentle tears, but huge, racking sobs that came from somewhere deep in my soul. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, for the relationship I believed was real, for the innocence of thinking family meant something sacred. But when the tears finally stopped, I felt something else. Resolve. The legal process was slower and more grueling than I'd anticipated. Sarah hired her own attorney, a sharp-suited woman named Valerie who argued that the deed transfer was completely legitimate, that I'd signed of my own free will, that my current claim was just the confusion of an elderly woman having regrets. The fact that Mrs. Morrison now feels the transfer was a mistake doesn't constitute fraud, Valerie argued at the first hearing. People make financial decisions they later regret all the time. That doesn't mean they were coerced. But Jeremy was ready. He presented the email evidence, the timeline of Sarah's calculated manipulation, testimony from the rushed lawyer who admitted he'd been paid by Sarah and had spent less than 15 minutes explaining what I was signing. This wasn't a financial decision made with full information and free will, Jeremy countered. This was a systematic campaign of psychological manipulation targeting a vulnerable elderly woman. Ms. Morrison Blackwell spent months building false trust, creating artificial urgency around estate planning, and deliberately misrepresenting her intentions for the property. The email evidence shows clear premeditation and intent to deceive. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Barbara Chan, no relation to the realtor, listened carefully to both sides. "I'm going to need time to review all the evidence," she said. "The deed transfer will remain challenged, meaning the property cannot be sold or further encumbered until this court makes a determination. Next hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from now." 6 weeks. I could live with that. Sarah apparently couldn't. 2 days after the hearing, Derek showed up at my door. I hadn't seen much of my son-in-law during this whole ordeal, and I'd wondered what he knew, how involved he'd been. Looking at him now, at the desperate expression on his face, I had my answer. "Edith," he said, and he couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Can we talk?" I let him in more out of curiosity than anything else. "Look," Derek began, still not looking at me directly. "I know things have gotten complicated with Sarah and the house situation, but we need to resolve this. We have financial obligations. We were counting on that money." "You were counting on money from selling my house," I corrected. "The house you helped convince Sarah to con me out of." "It wasn't a con," Derek protested weakly. "It was estate planning." "Stop," I said, echoing what I'd told Sarah. "I know exactly what it was. I've seen the emails. I know you two have been planning this since at least April." Derek's face flushed. "We're going to lose our house, Edith. Do you understand that? If we can't come up with the money, the bank is going to foreclose. We have 2 kids to think about. And I'm supposed to sacrifice my home so you can keep yours?" I asked. "Derek, you and Sarah make good money. If you're in financial trouble, it's because you've been living beyond your means. That's not my problem to solve by giving up everything I have." "You're being incredibly selfish," Derek said, and now there was anger in his voice. "Sarah is your only child. Those are your only grandchildren. How can you choose a house over family?" I stood up, walked to the door, opened it. "You and Sarah keep asking me that question," I said. "But you've got it backwards. You chose money over family. You looked at me and saw a bank account to drain. Now please leave." Derek stood, and for a moment I thought he might say something else, might show some genuine remorse. Instead, he just walked out, shoulders stiff with resentment. The attacks escalated after that. Sarah started a whisper campaign among our relatives, painting me as confused and difficult. I started getting calls from cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all concerned about my mental state. My niece Emily called, suggesting maybe I should see someone about my paranoia. "Sarah's just trying to help you, Aunt Edith," Emily said gently, as if speaking to a child. "She loves you so much. It's breaking her heart that you're accusing her of these terrible things." "Did Sarah show you the emails?" I asked. "What emails?" "The ones where she and a realtor planned to sell my house before she even convinced me to sign the deed. The ones where she calculated her profit." "Ask her to show you those emails, Emily. Then call me back and tell me I'm paranoid." Emily never called back. But not everyone abandoned me. Margaret, when she finally learned what had happened, was furious. "That ungrateful little snake," she seethed over coffee. "After everything you did for her. After you raised her alone, worked yourself to the bone to give her every opportunity. This is how she repays you." "I keep asking myself where I went wrong," I admitted. "How did I raise someone capable of this?" "You didn't raise her to be like this," Margaret said firmly. Sometimes people make their own choices, develop their own values. This is on Sarah, not you. Patricia from the newspaper was also supportive. The article on elder financial abuse is almost ready, she told me. I've interviewed 3 other victims who came forward after hearing about your case. Edith, this is happening more often than people realize. Adult children seeing their elderly parents as ATMs. Can you really not use my name yet? I asked. I don't want to jeopardize the legal case. Not until you're ready, Patricia promised. But when you are, this story is going to wake people up. The second hearing came faster than I expected. Jeremy had continued building the case, finding more evidence. He discovered that Sarah had actually taken out a second mortgage on her house 6 months ago, right around the time she started her campaign to get my property. He'd also found a credit card statement showing she'd booked a 5,000 European vacation, the trip she'd mentioned in that text to Lauren, scheduled for 2 months from now, contingent on the house sale going through. Your Honor, Jeremy presented at the hearing, Ms. Morrison Blackwell didn't target her mother out of genuine concern for estate planning. She was in financial distress due to her own poor decisions and saw her elderly mother's paid-off property as a solution. The evidence shows a clear pattern of financial manipulation. Valerie, Sarah's lawyer, tried to counter. My client's financial situation is irrelevant. What matters is whether Mrs. Morrison was competent and willing when she signed the deed. Under false pretenses, Jeremy interrupted. Induced by months of systematic manipulation and outright lies. Mrs. Morrison was told the house would stay in the family, that she could live there permanently. Instead, the property was to be sold within days of the transfer, with the proceeds going entirely to Ms. Morrison Blackwell. Judge Chun looked at Sarah, who was sitting at the defendant's table looking pale and stressed. Ms. Morrison Blackwell, did you intend to sell the property after your mother transferred the deed? Sarah glanced at her lawyer, who nodded slightly. I considered it as an option. For financial planning purposes. Within 48 hours of the deed transfer? The judge pressed. The timeline wasn't. I was exploring options. Did you tell your mother you intended to sell the house? Silence. Ms. Morrison Blackwell, did you tell your mother you intended to sell the property she was transferring to you? No, Sarah finally whispered. Did you tell her she would need to move out? I was going to discuss that with her when the time came. So you obtained the deed under false pretenses, with undisclosed plans that directly contradicted the representations you made to induce the transfer? Judge Chin's voice was sharp now. Your Honor, Valerie interjected. Family discussions about property are often informal. This wasn't informal, the judge said, holding up a printed copy of the email chain. This was calculated. This was fraud. She looked at Sarah. Ms. Morrison Blackwell, you should be ashamed of yourself. Sarah's face crumpled, but I felt no satisfaction. Only sadness. I'm voiding the deed transfer, Judge Chun declared. The property reverts to Edith Morrison effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm ordering Ms. Morrison Blackwell to reimburse her mother for all legal fees incurred in this matter. And I'm strongly suggesting that the district attorney's office review this case for potential criminal charges related to elder financial abuse. The gavel came down and it felt like the sound of justice. Jeremy turned to me with a huge smile. We won. You won. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. I'd won my house back. But I'd lost my daughter. Sarah didn't look at me as she left the courtroom, Valerie and Derek flanking her like bodyguards. I wondered if she felt any remorse, any recognition of how badly she'd wronged me. From the set of her shoulders, rigid with anger rather than shame, I doubted it. Aunt Edith, Jeremy said gently, there's one more thing. With the judge's recommendation, the DA might actually file charges. Are you prepared for that? Was I? Criminal charges against my own daughter? The thought made me feel sick. But then I thought about the other victims Patricia had found, the other elderly parents being scammed by their own children. If Sarah faced real consequences, maybe it would deter others. Maybe some other parent would be spared this heartbreak. I'll cooperate with whatever the DA decides to do, I said. 2 weeks later, the deed was officially re-recorded in my name. My house was mine again, legally and completely. I stood in the living room, looking around at the familiar space, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Safe. But the story wasn't over. Patricia's article came out the following Sunday, front page of the local section. Elder financial abuse. A local woman's story. She'd interviewed me extensively, along with the other victims, and while she used pseudonyms for everyone, the details were clear enough that anyone who knew our family would recognize the story. The response was overwhelming. Letters to the editor poured in, some supportive, some condemning Sarah, some from other elderly people sharing their own experiences. The article got picked up by the regional paper, then a national news blog. Suddenly, my private nightmare was a public cautionary tale. Sarah called me once during this period. Just once. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice cold. "Everyone thinks I'm a monster. The neighbors won't talk to me. Someone egged our house last night. My kids are being bullied at school because of what you said in that article." "I didn't name you," I said quietly. "I just told the truth about what happened to me." "You destroyed my life," Sarah hissed. "Over a house. Was it worth it, Mom? Was it worth losing your daughter and grandchildren?" "Sarah," I said, and I was surprised by how calm I felt. "I didn't lose you. You lost me the moment you decided to con me out of my home. Everything that's happened since then has just been the consequences of your choices." She hung up on me. I haven't heard from her since. The district attorney did file charges, not criminal fraud, but a civil action for elder financial abuse, seeking penalties and restitution. The case is still ongoing, but my part in it is mostly done. I gave my testimony, provided my evidence, and now it's in the hands of the legal system. As for me, I'm rebuilding my life. The house is still mine, truly mine now, with legal protections in place to prevent anything like this from happening again. Jeremy helped me set up a proper estate plan, with an independent trustee and clear directives that my property can't be transferred without specific safeguards. I've also become something of an accidental advocate. I speak at senior centers now, warning other elderly people about the signs of financial abuse. I tell my story, not for sympathy but as education. Watch for sudden renewed interest from distant family members. I tell them, be wary of pressure to make quick decisions about property or finances. Get independent legal advice, not from lawyers your family recommends. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. The community garden I helped establish 15 years ago has become my sanctuary. I spend hours there, hands in the dirt, coaxing life from seeds and soil. There's something deeply satisfying about nurturing growth, about creating beauty. It's the opposite of destruction, the opposite of what Sarah tried to do to me. Margaret is there most days too. We work side by side, not talking much, just being. She knows what I need isn't sympathy or advice, just companionship. The quiet solidarity of a real friend. Sometimes I think about Sarah's children, my grandchildren. Emily is 12 now, Michael is 9. I wonder what Sarah's told them about why Grandma isn't in their lives anymore. I wonder if they'll understand someday, if they'll seek me out when they're older and want to hear my side of the story. I hope so. But I've learned the hard way that you can't build your life around hopes for other people's behavior. You can only control your own choices. And I choose not to be a victim. People ask me sometimes if I regret fighting back. If it would have been easier to just accept the situation, move into assisted living, keep the peace with my daughter. The answer is simple. Absolutely not. My home represents more than just property. It represents my independence, my dignity, my right to make decisions about my own life. Giving that up without a fight would have meant accepting that I was too old, too weak, too unimportant to matter. I matter. I'm 72 years old and I matter. The house itself has become something different now. It's not just the place where I raised my daughter, where I lived with my husband, where decades of memories reside. It's also the symbol of my refusal to be diminished. Every morning when I wake up in my bedroom, in my house on my property, I'm reminded that I stood up for myself, that I didn't go gentle into that good night. There's a bittersweet irony to the whole situation. Sarah wanted this house so badly she was willing to destroy our relationship to get it. Now she has no relationship with me, and I have the house. She ended up with nothing, worse than nothing, because she has to live with what she did, with the person she revealed herself to be. I wonder sometimes if she has regrets. If she lies awake at night thinking about the moment things went wrong, wondering if there's a way back. I wonder if she misses me, or if her resentment has burned away any love she might have once felt. The truth is, I still love her. You can't stop loving your child, even when they betray you, even when they show you a side of themselves that's ugly and mercenary. But loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. And it doesn't mean you owe them forgiveness without genuine remorse, without real change. Sarah has never apologized. Not once. Every interaction has been about her financial problems, her reputation, her suffering. Never once has she acknowledged the pain she caused me, the violation of trust, the calculated cruelty of her months-long manipulation. Until that changes, if it ever changes, there's no path forward for us. I've made peace with that. Some relationships can't be salvaged, even the ones you'd give anything to repair. And maybe that's okay. Maybe part of wisdom is knowing when to hold on and when to let go. The legal fees Sarah was ordered to repay amounted to nearly $0,000. She contested it, of course, claiming financial hardship. But the court stood firm. She's paying in installments, $0 a month for the next 5 years. Every month, a check arrives in my mailbox, often with "For Edith Morrison" written in Sarah's handwriting on the memo line. Not Mom. Just my legal name. I deposit the checks and try not to think too hard about what they represent. Blood money, in a way. The cost of betrayal, calculated and distributed over time. Jeremy stopped by recently to check on me. "How are you really doing, Aunt Edith?" he asked, and I appreciated that he wasn't asking about the legal case or the house, but about me, about my emotional state. "I'm okay," I told him, and I meant it. Some days are harder than others. But I'm okay. "You know," Jeremy said, "what you did took real courage. A lot of people in your situation would have just accepted it, been too ashamed to fight back. You should be proud of yourself." Proud. Was I proud? I thought about that after he left. Pride seemed like the wrong word for the whole mess. I wasn't proud that my daughter had tried to scam me. I wasn't proud that I'd had to take her to court. I wasn't proud that our relationship was destroyed. But I was proud that I'd stood up for myself. That I'd refused to be a victim. That I'd used my voice and my will to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Maybe that was enough. The garden is blooming now. It's late spring, and the roses I've tended for decades are putting on a spectacular show. Deep reds, soft pinks, creamy whites. The hydrangeas are budding, preparing for their summer display. The Japanese maple has unfurled its delicate leaves, creating a canopy of crimson and green. I sit on my porch swing. The same swing Sarah and I used to sit on during those manufactured heart-to-hearts months ago. And I look at my garden, my yard, my house. All still mine. All reclaimed. A thought occurs to me. Sarah tried to take everything from me, but in failing she gave me something unexpected. She gave me proof of my own strength. She showed me that even at 72, even after a lifetime of putting others first, I could put myself first when it mattered. I could fight. I could win. Would I trade that knowledge to have my daughter back, to have the relationship I thought we had? In a heartbeat. The loss of family is a wound that never fully heals. But since that's not an option, since the relationship I thought we had turned out to be an illusion, I'll take what I gained from this nightmare. Self-knowledge, resilience, and the unshakable certainty that I am not someone who can be discarded or diminished. I'm Edith Morrison. This is my house. This is my life. And I'm not going anywhere. Patricia's follow-up article ran last month. Elder abuse victim fights back and wins. This time I let her use my real name. I let them photograph me in my garden, standing in front of my house, head high. The article detailed the whole story. Sarah's manipulation, the legal battle, the outcome. It was picked up nationally, shared thousands of times on social media. The response was overwhelming. I got letters from all over the country, from other elderly people who'd experienced similar betrayals, from adult children who were horrified at Sarah's behavior, from legal professionals who wanted to use my case as an example in elder law education. One letter particularly moved me. It was from a woman in Ohio named Dorothy, coincidentally, the same name as my friend who died in assisted living. "Dear Mrs. Morrison," she wrote, "I just read your story and I had to write to you. 6 months ago, my son convinced me to sign over my house to him. He said it was for tax purposes. Last week he told me he's selling it and I need to move out within 30 days. I thought I had no choice, that I just have to accept it. But your story showed me I can fight back. I've made an appointment with an attorney. Thank you for having the courage to share your story. You may have just saved my home. I cried when I read that letter. If my nightmare could help someone else avoid the same fate, then maybe there was some purpose to the pain. The DA's civil case against Sarah concluded last week. She was found liable for elder financial abuse and ordered to pay additional penalties of $0,000, half of which goes to the state's Elder Protection Fund, half to me. She's also required to complete education on elder rights and financial abuse, and the judgment will remain on her record. It's not enough to undo what she did, but it's something. It's accountability. I haven't decided what to do with the money yet. Part of me wants to donate it all to elder advocacy organizations. Part of me thinks I should keep it, create an emergency fund for the future that no one can touch but me. I have time to decide. What I have decided is this. I'm going to live. Really live. I'm 72, and if the past year has taught me anything, it's that life is too short to spend it being careful, being quiet, being what other people expect. I've signed up for an art class, watercolors, something I've always wanted to try. I've joined a local theater group that puts on plays featuring senior actors. I've started taking day trips to places I've always wanted to visit but never made time for when I was busy raising Sarah, working, being responsible. Margaret and I went to the beach last weekend, something we'd talked about for years but never done. We ate ice cream, walked along the shore, watched the sunset. It was perfect. Uncomplicated. Pure. You seem different, Margaret observed as we drove home. Lighter somehow. She was right. Losing Sarah, or rather learning the truth about Sarah, had been devastating. But it had also freed me from something I hadn't even realized was weighing me down. The need to make myself smaller, less troublesome, easier to love. I'd spent so much of my life trying to be a good mother, a good friend, a good person, always putting others first. Now I'm trying to be a whole person. Someone who can be good to others but also good to herself. Someone who sets boundaries. Someone who recognizes her own worth. It's revolutionary at 72 to finally put yourself first. The house is quiet tonight. It's just me, a cup of tea, and the book I've been reading. Outside, the garden is settling into evening, the flowers closing up for the night. Inside, everything is peaceful, secure. Mine. Sometimes I imagine what might have happened if I hadn't seen those emails. If I'd remained blissfully ignorant of Sarah's plans until the day she announced the house was sold and I had 30 days to pack up my life, would I have fought then? Or would I have been too shocked, too hurt, too defeated to resist? I'll never know. And I'm grateful for that uncertainty because it means I don't have to live with the knowledge that I might have given up, might have let her win. Instead, I know that when tested, when betrayed by the person I loved most in the world, I stood firm. I fought for myself. I won. That's not a small thing. That's everything. The phone rings sometimes late at night. I've learned to recognize Sarah's number on the caller ID. She never leaves a message. I don't know what she'd say if I answered. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd blame me. Maybe she'd beg for another chance. I don't answer. I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. But I do hope, in the deepest part of my heart, that someday she'll do the work to become someone worthy of reconciliation. That she'll genuinely reckon with what she did and why. That she'll learn to value people over money, relationships over assets. I hope that for her sake, not mine. Because I've learned I can be okay without her. It's not what I would have chosen, but it's the reality I've been given, and I'm making the most of it. Life is strange. A year ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life was. A loving relationship with my daughter, security in my home, a comfortable retirement among memories. Now all of that has been revealed as illusion or has been shattered entirely. But in the wreckage, I found something I didn't expect. Myself. Not Edith the mother. Not Edith the widow, not Edith the victim. Just Edith, a woman with her own desires, her own boundaries, her own unshakable dignity. I'm learning that you can grieve for a relationship and still be grateful it ended. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. You can be hurt and still be whole. These are lessons I wish I'd learned earlier, lessons I wish I'd never needed to learn at all. But they're mine now, earned through pain and struggle and the sheer determination not to be broken. The garden will bloom again next spring. The seasons will turn. Life will continue in this house that almost wasn't mine, in this home I fought to reclaim. And I'll be here, tending my roses, pursuing my interests, building a life that's mine alone. Not because I don't want to share it, I do. But because I've learned that sharing a life with someone should be a choice, not an obligation. Should be built on genuine love and respect, not manipulation and lies. Maybe someday Sarah will understand. Maybe she'll hit rock bottom, face her own demons, and realize that the money, the status, the material wealth she chased so desperately was never going to fill the void inside her. Maybe she'll want to repair what she broke, and will be willing to do the genuine work required to earn back trust. Or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll spend the rest of her life blaming me, resenting me, convinced that I'm the villain in her story. That's her choice, just like my response is mine. I've stopped waiting for her to change. I've stopped hoping she'll call with an apology. I've stopped imagining scenarios where we reconcile and everything goes back to how it was before. Because that's the trap, isn't it? The trap I'd fallen into for months, believing that if I just loved her enough, was patient enough, understood enough, everything would work out. Love alone isn't enough. It never was. What's enough is self-respect. Boundaries. The ability to say no and mean it. The courage to walk away from someone, even if that someone is your own child. If they're actively harming you. I think about the moment I stood at the sink, watching Sarah drive away after I told her to leave my house. I think about how I felt, angry, hurt, betrayed, but also powerful. For the first time in decades, maybe for the first time ever, I'd put my own needs first without guilt, without apology, without trying to soften the blow or make the other person feel better about my boundary. That moment has become the foundation of everything that's come after. Not as a moment of victory over Sarah, but as a moment of victory over myself. Over the version of me that had learned to make myself small, to apologize for existing, to prioritize others' comfort over my own survival. The new me doesn't do that anymore. Jeremy called yesterday with an update on the civil case. The final paperwork has been filed. The judgment is official and enforceable. Sarah is working with a payment plan, and barring any legal appeals, which her attorney has apparently advised against, given the overwhelming evidence against her, the matter is closed. You did good, Aunt Edith, Jeremy told me. You should feel good about what you accomplished. And I do. Not in a vindictive way, not because I feel good about winning against my daughter, but because I feel good about standing up for myself. About refusing to be gaslit, manipulated, or diminished. About demanding accountability and receiving it. That's what feels good. That's what I want others to understand when they hear my story. The emails I received after the article was published have been life-changing in ways I didn't anticipate. Yes, there were the expected support and encouragement, but there were also the heartbreaking stories from other elderly people facing similar situations. An 84-year-old woman whose son had convinced her to reverse mortgage her house. A 79-year-old man whose daughter had been slowly draining his bank account for years under the guise of helping with bills. A 75-year-old couple whose grandchildren had systematically isolated them and were pressuring them to move into a facility so the house could be sold. These weren't isolated incidents. This was a pattern. An epidemic of elder financial abuse perpetrated by the very people who were supposed to love and protect them. I started collecting the stories, documenting them, sharing them with advocacy organizations. With Jeremy's help, I've begun working with a nonprofit that focuses on elder rights. We're developing educational materials, creating workshops, helping victims understand their legal options. It's given my pain a purpose. The betrayal I experienced is now being channeled into protection for others. If nothing else good comes from what Sarah did to me, at least I can prevent someone else from experiencing it. The volunteer coordinator at the nonprofit, a woman named Susan who's in her 50s, asked me recently why I was so passionate about this work. Because it happened to me, I said simply. And because if talking about what happened to me can prevent it from happening to someone else, then my pain has meaning. Then Sarah's betrayal becomes a tool for good instead of just a wound. Susan got teary. You're remarkable, Edith, she said. You know that, right? Most people in your situation would be bitter, angry, withdrawn. You've turned your trauma into activism. That takes incredible strength. Strength. Is that what this is? I don't feel particularly strong. I feel like someone who's been broken and is gluing themselves back together, one piece at a time, doing the best I can. But maybe strength isn't about not breaking. Maybe it's about what you do after you're broken. Maybe it's about getting back up, dusting yourself off, and moving forward even when it would be easier to stay down. If that's strength, then yes, I suppose I have it. Last week, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to visit Sarah's house. Not to see her. I called first, found out she was at work, but to see my grandchildren. Derek answered the door, looking surprised and wary. "Edith," he said carefully. "Sarah's not home." "I know," I said. "I came to see Emily and Michael." His expression became complicated. "That might not be a good idea right now. Sarah's very upset about everything." "Derek," I said quietly, "those are my grandchildren. I know my daughter and I are having conflicts, but that doesn't mean I get to disappear from their lives. Unless you tell me they don't want to see me, I'm coming in." He hesitated, then stepped back, letting me pass. Emily came down the stairs first, tentative, as if she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be happy to see me. Michael hung back, watching me with uncertain eyes. They'd grown since I'd last seen them. Had they always been this tall? How many milestones had I missed because of the conflict with Sarah? "Hi guys," I said, and I opened my arms. They came to me slowly, then quickly wrapping around me, and I felt my heart crack open in a new way. This wasn't about Sarah or Derek or any of the adults. This was about the continuity of love. The simple fact that I had loved these children since before they were born, and I wasn't going to let family dysfunction sever that bond. We spent 2 hours together. I helped Michael with his math homework. I listened to Emily tell me about her school musical. I bought them pizza and let them stay up past their bedtime. And when Derek finally said Sarah would be home soon and I needed to leave, I hugged them both fiercely. "I love you," I told them. "I want you to know that. Whatever's going on between your mom and me, my love for you doesn't change. I'm always your grandmother. That's forever." Emily cried. Michael nodded seriously, taking the words to heart in the way only a 9-year-old can. I left before Sarah arrived. Not because I was afraid of confrontation, but because I didn't want the kids to witness it. They'd been through enough conflict already. But as I drove home, I felt something shift inside me. I'd drawn a line with Sarah, but that line didn't have to include my grandchildren. I could have a relationship with them independent of my fractured relationship with their mother. It wouldn't be easy. It would require careful navigation, intentional boundaries, probably some awkward conversations with Sarah. But it was possible. And it was necessary. Because those kids didn't choose their mother any more than Sarah chose to become a person capable of betraying her own mother. They're innocent bystanders in this family drama. And they deserve to know that they have a grandmother who loves them unconditionally. I'm planning to visit them regularly now. Once a month, whether Sarah likes it or not. It's not a perfect solution, but it's what I can do to maintain that connection, to make sure they know they're loved, to be a stable presence in a family that's fractured. Margaret thinks I'm being too generous. "After what she did to you, you're going to keep spending time with her kids?" she asked skeptically. "Her kids didn't do anything to me," I said. "And they didn't ask for a mother who'd manipulate her own parent. I'm not going to punish them for Sarah's choices." "That's very forgiving of you." "It's not forgiveness," I corrected. "It's survival. If I cut myself off from those kids, I lose them. And they lose me. And for what? To prove a point to Sarah? To hurt her the way she hurt me? I've already been hurt enough. I'm not going to hurt myself further by severing ties that matter to me." Margaret smiled then. "You really have grown up, haven't you?" The old Edith would have felt guilty about not punishing Sarah through her kids. The old Edith would have let Sarah steal her house and move into a nursing home without a fight, I replied. We're both different now. Tonight, I'm sitting in my garden as the sun sets, watching the light turn golden, then orange, then deep purple. The evening is cool, fragrant with the smell of roses and honeysuckle. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog is barking. A car drives past. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary evening in an ordinary life. But it doesn't feel ordinary to me. Feels precious. Sacred even. Because I almost lost this moment, this place, this sense of home and belonging. I came this close to losing it all because I trusted the wrong person, believed the wrong lies, didn't listen to my instincts when they whispered warnings. But I didn't lose it. I fought and I won. And now every moment in this house, in this garden under this sky, feels like a gift. I think about Sarah sometimes and feel a strange mixture of emotions. Sadness that my daughter is capable of such betrayal. Anger at the months of manipulation and lies. Disappointment that she hasn't shown any genuine remorse or willingness to change. But also, and this surprised me when I first felt it, pity. Because whatever she achieved through her scheme, it cost her far more than it could ever gain her. She lost her mother. She lost my respect. She lost the chance to become someone better than the person she revealed herself to be. Money can't buy that back. I've been thinking about writing a book. A more detailed, more complete account of what happened, what I learned, how I recovered. Not to embarrass Sarah further or to sell a sensational story, but to create a genuine resource for other elderly people facing similar situations. A guide that says, this is what it looks like. These are the warning signs. Here's how to protect yourself. Here's how to fight back if it happens to you. Jeremy thinks it's a good idea. So does Susan at the nonprofit. Patricia has already offered to help me with the writing process, drawing on her journalism experience. It would be powerful, Patricia said when I mentioned it. Your story fully told with context and resources and practical advice. Edith, you could help so many people. Maybe I will. Maybe that's the final chapter of this story. Not just surviving what Sarah did to me, but transforming that survival into something that helps others. Turning trauma into wisdom. Turning pain into power. The sun has set now, and the stars are beginning to emerge. I recognize the constellations I've watched every night for decades from this porch. Orion, the Big Dipper, the North Star, steady and true. I've always believed in being true to yourself, in standing firm in your values. I just didn't know until all this happened how true those beliefs ran. I didn't know I had the capacity to stand up to someone I loved, to say no and mean it, to prioritize my own dignity over maintaining a relationship that was built on lies. I do now. And I'm grateful for that knowledge, even though I wish I'd never needed to acquire it. The house is quiet behind me, warm with lamplight. Inside, I have a kettle warming for tea, a book waiting on my reading chair, a bed made with fresh sheets. All the comforts of a home that's truly mine. Not just physically but spiritually and legally. A home I'll never have to surrender. Never have to flee, never have to mourn. This is my life now. This is my future. And I'm building it on a foundation of self-respect, hard-won wisdom, and the unshakable knowledge that I am worthy of being treated well, and worthy of treating myself well too. Sarah may never understand what she lost when she tried to take my house. She may never grasp that she lost something far more valuable than $40,000. She lost the opportunity to be part of my life, the real part, where I'm not performing the role of the grateful mother or the confused elder, but simply being myself in all my complexity and strength. That loss is on her, and I'm at peace with that. The evening stretches ahead of me, full of possibility. Tomorrow I have book club, then my art class, then dinner with Margaret and her daughter. Next week, I'm planning a trip to visit my brother upstate, something I haven't done in 5 years. The month after that, there's a conference on elder financial abuse where I'm supposed to speak about my experience. My life is full. Not in a frantic, scattered way, but in a deep, meaningful way. Full of purpose and connection and growth. Full of the things that matter. Genuine relationships. Activities that bring me joy, work that has meaning. A home that's truly mine. I didn't expect to find these things through betrayal and pain. But here they are, waiting for me on the other side of the worst period of my life. So this is the real ending of my story. Not revenge, not vindication, not Sarah suffering consequences, though that happened too. The real ending is me, at 72 years old, finally understanding my own worth. Finally putting myself first without guilt. Finally building a life that's mine and mine alone. And finding that it's beautiful.